Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm Richard Fowler from Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Introduction to the Audit Template. A few logistics before we get started. All participants are in a listen-only mode. If you have questions during the broadcast, you may ask them in the question pane on the right-hand side of the screen. These questions will be documented, and we will try to answer them directly via email following the webinar. Also, this webinar is being recorded. We will be posting it for availability at a later date, along with a PDF of the presentation slides, which we will also email to you following the broadcast. The Audit Template tool is currently embedded in a modeling tool called Asset Score, which we will talk about in a little while, and it is available as part of the suite of analysis tools for commercial buildings sponsored by the U.S. Department of Energy Building Technologies Office. BTO's Building Energy Data subprogram supports the creation of standards and open source management tools that increase the availability and value of building energy data. This webinar is part of a series of recent and upcoming webinars providing insight and instruction for using some of the aforementioned analysis tools. For example, Introduction to Asset Score and Introduction to SEED took place earlier this week, and an advanced features webinar for SEED will take place in May. At the conclusion of this session, we hope you will have acquired the following: a greater awareness of the Audit Template tool, an understanding of the basics of data collection, tool navigation, data entry, and audit reports, an insight into tool best practices, and ability to know where to go for help and additional resources, which is of course important. This session will be divided into 3 sections where we will cover the what, why, and how of the tool, brief look at some of its key features, followed by a step-by-step demonstration of how to enter and submit an audit report. So what is the Audit Template? Well, it's a free web-based tool to collect, store, and report building energy audit data. It includes the capability to produce an audit data report in a variety of file formats that may be submitted to cities to demonstrate completion of building energy audits for ordinance compliance. For example, the cities of New York City and San Francisco are currently using the Audit Template for their reporting requirements. And between these 2 cities, nearly 2,000 audit reports have been submitted to date. You may refer to their websites listed here for more information about these requirements and for specific instructions on compliance. Some noteworthy features of the tool include the fact that the Audit Template uses an ASHRAE 211 standard as the base standard. It also has customized templates to support different cities that have different data collection and reporting requirements, as we just mentioned. The Audit Template allows for seamless data transfer to other tools using Building Sync, which is a common schema for commercial building energy audit data that software developers can use to exchange data between audit tools. You may visit buildingsync.net for additional information about this. The Audit Template also provides easy access to previously entered reports, and it leverages Asset Score's existing software capability with a long-term goal of converting audit input data to Asset Score to generate an Asset Score and Score report, which is why the Audit Template is presently embedded in a suite of tools on the Asset Score website. It is available at buildingenergyscore.energy.gov, and this suite is comprised of Asset Score, which is a modeling tool to assess the physical and structural energy efficiency of commercial and multifamily residential buildings. It generates an asset score or a simple efficiency rating that enables comparison among buildings, and an asset score report that lists opportunities to upgrade a building's energy efficiency. The Audit Template, which we're discussing here today, is available. Also, a tool called TSPR, or Total System Performance Ratio, which is a performance-based compliance tool that is under development for the state of Washington and should become available within the next couple of months. This graphic here illustrates the vision of how Asset Score and the Audit Template are integrated to work with each other and with other public and privately available billing analysis tools. The Asset Score and Audit Template tools are represented inside the gray box. Asset Score presently has a preview input mode, which generates an estimated score range. However, this is a tool feature that may not be supported in the long term. When focusing on the green Asset Score full analysis box in the middle, you see how with a minimum of about 30 building inputs, you can generate an asset score and score report, as well as an open studio model. Eventually, these inputs may be imported directly from audit data from the audit template. And then looking at the purple box, you can see how the audit template has the capability to import utility data from Portfolio Manager. So if you're reporting the billing data for a benchmarking ordinance in Portfolio Manager, you can connect it to your audit template account and import monthly energy use by energy type. You also see with the orange boxes there, the capability to import and export audit data from other audit collection and data management tools through the use of building sync XML files. And we'll address that in a little bit detail when we take a look at the demo. So how does the audit template work? Well, using it is a straightforward process. You may use the tool with a mobile device during a building walkthrough if you have a Wi-Fi connection, or by launching the tool in a web browser, selecting an appropriate city template, and entering data by following the on-screen navigation prompts. Or you may collect and record data using your own methods or tools, and then launch the audit template on a desktop or laptop for data entry at a different location. Once all required inputs have been entered, you may then submit your report. City officials will receive an email notice that a report has been submitted. They would then be able to access the report from an available dashboard in the tool, where they may review and mark for compliance and download reports as either PDF, CSV, or XML files for their record keeping, tracking, and additional analysis. Before we get started on the demo, I want to highlight a few items that you will soon see in the tool. The tools and asset score identified by the tabs at the top of the screen and by the logos above the building tables, as highlighted here for the audit template. When starting a new building report entry, New York City auditors will need to select the NYC Energy Efficiency Report from the green Audit Report drop-down button. The reason New York is called out separately is because they have a slightly different collection process and reporting process, where groups of buildings are identified with a BBL or Borough Block Lot Identifier, where multiple buildings may be included in the same BBL, and buildings with shared HVAC systems may be documented and reported. For all other jurisdictions, you would select Other City Report, and then select from the report type drop-down in the pop-up screen. I do want to point out that this step will soon change, and a single drop-down menu will be displayed for all cities. When you have an audit report building open, a navigation toolbar is visible at the top to help guide you through the input sections and screens. On each input screen, data input icons help to identify field requirements. For example, items marked with a check mark icon correspond to ASHRAE Level 2 inputs. Items marked with a suitcase icon correspond to city-specific inputs. Different city templates may include inputs not found in an ASHRAE Level 2 audit that they are requesting. The red stars indicate that a field is required for reporting. There are also a handful of inputs that do not have any icons associated with them. For example, skylights, elevators, certain HVAC controls. These are optional asset score inputs that could be used later if converting your audit report entry into an asset score building for modeling. There are validation warnings that will be displayed if fields have not been completed. The validations error link, the top right there, may be referred to if you see validation warnings and you're unsure which inputs or screens include missing data. Fields that are not required may be hidden using the yellow hide button. This may help streamline your data entry, or you may choose for these fields to remain visible. In fact, you may even choose to enter data in optional fields for your own records. On the far right, you can see that you may download reports at any time. There are notes to indicate whether you're downloading an in-progress report or a report that has already been submitted. When you're ready to use the audit template, use a web browser to connect to buildingenergyscore.energy.gov. Select the register button and follow the prompts and email confirmation instructions. Enter your email and password and log in. And before we do the same, I just want to point out a few items you will find on the login page. There's a question mark right there in the middle. These icons are available throughout the tool, which links to an online user guide. There's a help desk button, which launches a form to send a question to the ASHRAE and Audit Template technical support team. And there's a link to the Quick Start Guide, which outlines a 7-step process for submitting a building. Users logging in for the first time will see a one-time welcome screen for the ASHRAE suite of tools, and you can select Audit Template that will take you directly to the tool itself. Okay, let's go ahead and launch the tool now. I'm going to stop the slideshow, and you should see that I have already opened a web browser and have connected to buildingenergystore.energy.gov. Here's the quick start guide that brings up a PDF. If you want to follow the 7-step process, the tool will basically guide you through it with some navigation prompts, but this quick start guide could be a useful way to start and reference. We're going to close it for now and go ahead and log in. And as mentioned earlier, we can navigate from the Asset Score tool to the Audit Template tool by selecting the tab at the top of the screen, which is now highlighted in yellow, and you can see that the Audit Template logo appears above the table. This table, as you can see, already includes some buildings that have been added for this account. The table can be sorted in a number of ways by the headings at the top of the table. There are also some filters on the right-hand side. This could be useful if you have quite a few buildings that you're working on or have submitted. So for example, if you only want to see the buildings that have been submitted, we can filter on that. And so now all we see are the submitted buildings, but we're going to reset this for now. There's also a keyword search. If you're trying to find a building, or if you want to filter on a particular keyword. For example, if we only want to look at the example buildings that I've created, you can type that keyword here, and only the example buildings are displayed. So we're going to create a brand new audit report. And so we select the big green audit report button. And as indicated earlier, the option to select a New York City or an other city report appears. And we're going to select a demo city report. And we're just going to give it a name, Building X. And the building was completed in the year 2000, and we'll say that it's 20,000 square feet. And somewhere in Chicago is where the building is located. If I had tried to enter in advance without entering a required field, there'll be a prompt, as you can see here, that I didn't enter the date. So I'm going to re-enter it. You can add notes to your building for future reference. And we're going to go ahead and create our building. And this brings us into the main screen. As I mentioned earlier, there will be a toolbar at the top of the screen where you can select each of the sections available for the tool, or you can use the previous or next navigation tabs. It can take us back to the building information screen, for example. Maybe it wasn't building X, it was building Y. And you can save that and continue. The first section is prompting us to enter some contact information and audit details. So you can select audit details. And as mentioned earlier, some of these fields are starred, so they're required, and some of them aren't. If you don't even want to see the fields that aren't required for your particular city, you may hide them. And now all we have to enter is a date for our level 1 audit. But maybe it took place, 2015 or 2020. Anyway, you get the idea. We have entered a date for our level 1 audit, and we can enter for level 2. I'm going to move on to the audit team and building staff and point out that some cities, well, what we see here, this particular report is requesting that we enter a building auditor and a building owner. There are some templates that request a few other roles for your audit team. That may be a building operator or maybe a submitter. If the submitter is somebody other than who the auditor that's conducted the audit, this particular template is just asking for these two roles. There's a big green button here called Manage My Contacts, and before you enter information on either of these, you'll need to create kind of a Rolodex or collection of names and individuals with contact information. And this could be handy if you're entering multiple buildings that may reference the same individual. You don't have to type it every time. Just kind of enter it into your Rolodex and then go back to the auditor screen, for example, and select from your contact list and continue. At this point, I'm actually going to exit our demonstration building that we've created for a couple of reasons. One, you don't have to sit here and watch me type every single input. We're going to open up a building that has already been completed and have inputs in it already. And this will also give us an opportunity to review a building that has already been submitted. So I'm going to select this example audit report building I've created earlier. And as you can see, I've already submitted it earlier. And when I select that, you'll see the only thing that's displayed is the name of the building and the address and the fact that it was submitted. And there's a date stamp and a version stamp. This was submitted earlier this morning as version 0. And once again, I'm using this as an example. Maybe you've submitted your building and the city has reviewed it and indicated that there's some missing information or information they would like you to review. Or maybe you yourself realized you missed some information or you've since gathered additional information. Or maybe you submitted it 2 years from now or 5 years from now, and maybe your ordinance is requesting you to submit every 5 years, so you can edit the building you submitted, make any additional changes necessary, and resubmit. So in order to do that, all you need to do is take it out of submit mode by selecting the Edit Your Building button. And it says, are you sure you want to do that? And we'll say okay. And now we have the building back into the familiar screen that we saw earlier. And maybe we're going to change the date for resubmitting to the year 2022, or something like resubmit if you choose to change the name, or you can leave it alone. Okay, so as you can see here, the previous building we had, there was a whole bunch of warnings up at the top of the screen indicating, wait a second, there's some required inputs. These are not there now because we have already entered all the pertinent information. So we're going to take a look at we've already addressed the contact section. We're going to look at the facility description section. Building characteristics have been entered, the gross floor area, the number of floors, general building shape. And we're going to move on to the use types. Maybe this particular building has space in it for office, space in it for retail. We have entered a value for the square footage for the retail space, and the tool automatically calculated that what the percentage of the total gross floor area is, and that could be handy. You can refer to that on the screen here. If you open up the retail space, you can see that we have entered both information for the required fields and additional fields for information here. And then we'll move on to construction. Construction is asking you to enter inputs for roofs, skylights if necessary. Notice that the skylights have a little warning that says, hey, no skylights have been added yet. But that's okay. It's not a validation prompt that you need to enter them. It's just saying, oh, by the way, if you want to enter a skylight, you haven't done so yet. If you want to edit any previous information that you've entered, for example, for our roof, maybe we reviewed our information and maybe the R value was actually R30 instead of R20. You can make the change and save it and then move on to the other inputs. Speaking of inputs, let's move on to lighting. Lighting inputs screen is a little bit different than the others we just saw. It's more of a table format. You can add a fixture or add a row to this table by selecting add a fixture. Maybe your building has some LEDs, and you can select whatever controls may be associated with your lighting and then assign it to a particular location. So maybe since the last time you took a look at the building, you discovered that the retail store has added some LED lighting. It will prompt you. Most templates will prompt for either an area, percent area served, or actual square footage area served. This demonstration is one or the other. And we'll go ahead and hit save. Actually, let's remove that because I want to show you that let's see. Let's try this again because I want to demonstrate the fact that the warning icon up here is saying, wait a second, this section is incomplete. You forgot to enter some additional fields. So we'll go ahead and remove that fixture that was just for demonstration and move on to HVAC. We've previously entered a pair of different HVAC systems, but maybe once again your review has discovered that maybe the retail building, in fact, has a VAV system where it has a heating plant, maybe a hot water boiler. You would need to enter your heating plant information here. You can select a particular input does not apply to your particular system. You can select not applicable. There's a variety of drop-down menus that can guide you or that you can choose from, or there's free inputs. Maybe we have a single boiler. And maybe, of course, sorry, I'm moving. I apologize if sometimes I may be moving too quickly. I'll try to be a little more deliberate. I do acknowledge that refresh rates you may not be seeing everything as fast as I'm moving around, so I'll try to move a little slower. Maybe you have a cooling tower, condenser that we will add. Cooling towers will then need to be linked to your chiller by selecting chiller. and the chiller condenser type that we just selected. Maybe it's located on the roof, etc. Okay, so we've created our chiller and our boiler, and then we need to add that to an HVAC system. For the heating source, we're going to select the heating plant that was previously created. We created a boiler, and the cooling source was also a plant, and we created an absorption chiller. And then there's additional sections to add distribution equipment. Once again, maybe it's a VAV with reheat system. There's available options here for delivery equipment and terminal unit. Here's our VAV with reheat, and etc. Once you've saved that, you'll notice now you have your second heating system with your boiler and your chiller. I kind of went through that rather quickly, but as you can see, there's quite a number of inputs that you can add for HVAC controls. If you're unsure what some of those inputs are, once again, you can refer to the question mark icon that will launch the help guide. Particularly for HVAC, I do want to point out that there's a system configuration table. If you're not sure what cooling source or central distribution type to select for some of the commonly used HVAC systems, this table could be rather helpful for how to input particular HVAC systems. Okay, moving on to hot water systems. Maybe this system has already been entered, maybe you have an electric system, or maybe you discovered that they changed to natural gas, and we can make the change here. There's a space function served option where we've identified that this particular hot water system is serving both the retail store and the office space, and it's serving 100% of the spaces, the areas for both these particular spaces. Okay, there's an opportunity to add operations, elevators, etc. Many of these are not required for some of the cities, but these are inputs that are available to enter as well. Okay, we're going to move on to utility data information. There's quite a few sections here, but not all of them are required for example, and not all of them have a lot of inputs. For example, the ownership details is just asking whether it's owned or leased. And this particular demo does not have any metering configuration inputs. The City of New York does. But every template does request that you enter an energy supply source. For example, we've already entered 3 here. Of course, we had entered lighting, of course, for electricity and an electric chiller. Maybe our boiler was using fuel oil, and our hot water system was using natural gas. You can add additional energy types if your building is served by additional forms of energy. There's also the opportunity to enter if you have solar panels, for example, and you're generating some electricity, and if you're exporting that electricity, you can enter those as energy types and then document the energy use that you're generating and exporting in these sections here. We're not going to address those specifically in this particular demonstration. We are just going to take a look at the fact that we have entered some metering energy data. We had imported this earlier from Energy Star Portfolio Manager. There's 12 months of data here, example data from the year 2015. It is all summed. I'm going to round this off here to easier numbered. We have an average annual total for the month for the year of 2015 for electricity. We've also entered some delivered energy for our fuel oil. And for our demonstration, we're going to actually add 2016 data. And in order to do that, you would select the energy reporting years and data import. We're going to enter 2016. And as you notice, the previous entry for 2015 had 12 metering inputs and 2 delivered energy inputs. When we added the dates for 2016, there are 0. You can, on the metered energy screen, you can enter those individually by selecting add a row, or if you have a different, other than electricity. So for example, maybe in 2016 that water heater was added, you can enter natural gas. Maybe it was actually December of 2016, and we don't have a full year's worth of data. You can enter just the one row. As you notice, the tool automatically identified that the month of December had 31 days. Any item in green is a calculated field by the tool. It converted our therms that we entered and to therms per day and kBTUs per day. Notice it doesn't have an average annual total because we don't have 12 months of data, but that's okay. There's a building annual summary for energy use and energy cost that can automatically calculate a value for the annual energy use. That entry for natural gas is appearing as 0, but if we uncheck that box, we can manually enter what the annual use was for natural gas, or for all of them for that matter. We're going to leave this as automatically calculated by the tool because I'm going to go back and import that 2016 electricity data I talked about by following the steps available in this section. Import energy use from Portfolio Manager. Once again, there's a user's guide module that can give you step-by-step instructions on how to do that. We're going to assume that we've already downloaded a spreadsheet for our demonstration purposes, and we're going to select that file that we've downloaded and select the Import Spreadsheet button. And there should be a notification that says your energy data was uploaded successfully. 12 rows have been added. Then when we go to our metered screen, we will now see 12 entries for 2016. And our average annual total now changed from 1 million to 600,000 because in 2016, maybe we used, looks like we used quite a bit less amount of energy. Maybe that's because maybe we switched from electric heating to our fuel oil HVAC system, for example. Also, if you notice the electricity cost data, these values are 0 because that energy cost data was not brought in from Energy Star Portfolio Manager. If you're wanting to report that or required to report that, you would have to enter those values manually. Okay, now our building annual summary has our annual average as 600,000 automatically calculated, and that concludes the energy use section. Once again, speaking of automatically calculating, the tool will calculate an EUI based on your square footage and the energy use values that you've inputted. And the final screen on for utility is a benchmarking screen. You may be asked to enter a benchmarking source. In this case, we've selected Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Maybe it was benchmarked in 2016, which is why we brought in 2016 data, for example. And you can enter what the values were here and add any additional comments as needed, both for your records or if there's information you'd like to bring to the attention of who you're reporting to. Okay, let's move on to the next section, which is energy use by end use. And you have the opportunity to identify end uses by use type. And so, for example, the tool, we've already entered some values here. It's comparing to the annual summary that we looked at before. And maybe there's 6,500 kilowatt hours that are unaccounted for. Maybe the office building had a kitchen that had some refrigeration. So if we enter that particular value, we are now matching what we're reporting for our annual summary. So this could be used as a quick QA that you're accounting for the end uses. And as you see, we've also listed fuel oil that may be used for heating rather than our water heating. Maybe once again, maybe we have a natural gas water heater, so we've made those adjustments and we've saved it. And we are ready to move on to the next section, which is energy savings opportunity. And here is where you can document the energy efficiency measures that you may have identified when you've conducted your audit. They can be entered here as and grouped as packages. For example, maybe we have a lighting retrofit package that is recommending to retrofit with T8s, or maybe retrofit, actually maybe rather than T8s, let's retrofit with LEDs. And you can, there's an open input field here to add additional description. You're replacing your incandescents with LEDs, or you're replacing your CFLs, or maybe you're upgrading your exit signs with new exit signs. And then you can identify what the estimated cost savings might be, the energy savings by by fuel, so electricity or fuel oil or natural gas. Then you may enter an estimate for costs, whether there's some incentive programs and what those might be. Then the tool will automatically calculate a net measure cost or an ROI. And at the very bottom, sum all of the values you've entered for your packages down below for total cost savings and total costs. And then this will be reported in a similar looking table on the PDF report to your city. Okay, so as indicated earlier, there are no warnings that we have missed some required fields. So you can move on to submitting to the city by selecting the city submission screen. Certain cities may have different instructions listed here. For example, this particular demonstration report says acquire and sign an auditor certificate. And so you can upload that particular certificate and attach it with your report. For example, we'll select the Add Attachment button. Select that this attachment is referring to an audit certificate. or we've completed it and we're entering it here. And we'll select the previous, select a file, an example, attachment, for example, and save it. And then the cities would see, they would have access to this file that you're attaching. You can add any comments that you wish to enter here. This is a revised version of the report that we entered earlier, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can hit the Submit to City button, and that will put it back in submitted mode that we talked about earlier. I think I mentioned in the slides, before or after you submit a building, you could select this download button to download either a report in either of these file formats for your own records. A CSV file will just be a straight, flat CSV file with all of the inputs you've entered. Of course, the PDF file, which we'll take a look at here in a second, and then the XML file. I'm going to select this XML file to download and get back to that in a moment. And then I'm going to select the PDF report just to show you that it's basically just a straight listing of all the inputs that you've entered. There's an overview page which indicates what the report status is. For example, we haven't submitted this report yet, it's still in progress. What today's date is, some of the information that you entered in the very first screen when we started. And then if we kind of scroll down, each of the sections are listed in section headings. And as you can see, everything that you've entered is listed here. Okay, I'm going to close that, and I'm actually going to go back to the home page because I'm going to show you a couple things, a couple features that could be handy, both while you're editing a building or when you've completed a building. The first of those is how to share a building. Maybe you're working with a colleague and you're dividing responsibilities. One person is entering energy data, one person's entering construction data. You can share your building and both edit at the same time. Or maybe different people are entering different buildings for a particular building owner, but the building owner wants access to all of the buildings that people are working or entering for them. You can select the manage. First of all, you have to create some contacts to share your building with. So manage contacts. And you can search for anybody that has an account in the system already. For example, if I search for myself, I have discovered that I have quite a few accounts under my name. You can identify somebody that you want to add as your contact by selecting the Add Contacts button. They will then have an incoming requests box on their screen where they can select accept or ignore. It's kind of like Facebook where you send out a friend request, or this is a contact request basically. So for example, I've sent an outgoing request to myself and I need to accept this. Anyway, once you've done that, you'll have a list of contacts that you can share buildings with. Select the Manage Asset Score or Audit Template Building Shares. And all the buildings that you have created in your name are now on display. And you can select, for example, Building Y for our demonstration. Maybe I want to share it with somebody. Click the button, select Share, and then select Full Access and share the building with that individual. Both accounts will then be able to access the building and make edits to your building. You can select the sharing details. It's like if you want to refresh your memory on who you've shared it with, selecting that button identifies who you've shared the building with. And if you've made a mistake or you want to actually remove access, you can just click the button and remove the sharing access. Okay, the next feature I want to go over is how to import a building. And if you recall, we downloaded the XML file from building Y, and this could be useful for a number of reasons. First of all, it could be handy to make a duplicate of your building. Maybe you have several buildings that have a lot of the same inputs, just a few things are different, and you don't want to enter all of your data, re-enter all of your data for each one. You can make a copy of your building and then change the name and change the inputs and submit. That could be one example of how that could be useful. You can, if I didn't want to edit the submitted report, for example, and I want to just leave it as is and maybe submit a new building, maybe leave this one for 2020 and my new building I'm submitting next year. Rather than editing it and changing it, maybe I just want to leave it alone. By making a duplicate, you can do that. And then, of course, the XML file may be used for another tool. You may import it into Seed, for example. You may use it for another private sector tool or another analysis tool. For our purposes, we're going to go ahead and import that file that we exported by selecting the big green import button and choose the file and find where it is, select it and open it and import. And then when we go back to the home page, we will see that I actually have imported building 9908, the building that we identified as resubmit. And you can change that building name and basically do what you want. Maybe you imported the wrong building and you want to delete that. If you select the options gear icon, you can delete your building. You can also share your building rather than going through the steps I identified earlier. This will take you to the share screen. On the far right-hand side here are the ability to do some bulk items. For example, if you check both those boxes for those two buildings and scroll down to the with selection button, maybe you want to delete both of them all at once, or maybe you want to download both of those reports. This could be handy if you're working with quite a number of buildings. So the ability to do a bulk download or a bulk delete could be handy and useful for you. Okay, I think I've covered quite a lot of information in quite a short period of time. I hope I didn't go too fast for everybody, but I am going to return now back to the slideshow and just bring up a couple of final slides here. Once again, I hope I was able to cover all of the items you were hoping to learn today. If not, please submit questions or review information and guidance from the user guide by accessing the ASHRAE Help Desk from the Help Desk icon at the top right-hand corner of the tool, by connecting to help.buildingenergyscore.com, or by selecting the question mark help icons from within data entry screens. Also want to point out the ASHRAE resources page has additional documents, including videos, example reports, etc., that may be useful. I'm actually going to, that's one thing I did forget. Okay, the help resources page. So that XML file that I downloaded and showed you for demonstration purposes, if you scroll down in the resources page to the audit template section of resources, there are a pair of already completed audit report buildings that may be useful for you or interesting, there's a building that was created for the San Francisco report template and for the New York City report template. If you download those XML files, you can import them into your account and see what a completed audit report looks like for your own information. You can also see what a CSV file looks like, and of course the PDF reports, and other useful information such as the quick start guide, etc. And of course this particular webinar will be added here for future reference, and the presentation slides, as well as the presentation slides from our asset score webinar that we conducted on Tuesday. Okay, back to the slideshow. And actually we are at the end. This concludes today's webinar. I hope I was able to meet the objectives outlined at the beginning of the broadcast, and I hope that you find the audit template to be a useful tool for your building energy audit projects and programs. And on behalf of Pacific Northwest National Laboratory and the Department of Energy, thank you for your time and have a good day.